Okay, let's kick this off. I'd like to welcome everybody to today's webinar and panel discussion, The Urban Hunter. What are the challenges to getting outside if you live in an urban environment and are interested in hunting or you hunt already? So we've got a really great panel this morning that I'm excited to have this conversation with. And what we'll do is, how we'll be operating this is we've got several different topics we're going to cover. From a duration standpoint, it'll probably be around an hour or less. And then if you do have questions throughout, feel free to click on the question and answer, the Q&A button at the bottom. And Matt, who is helping me moderate this event, will be able to share those with the panelists and myself when you have questions. So everybody who is a participant and not a panelist, you are automatically on mute. So we can't hear you and we can't see you, just so you know. The one interaction would be through the Q&A section. So with that, I think what we'll do is we'll kick things off here and talk a little bit about what our focus is today. So today's topic is, what challenges does the hunter have who lives in an urban area when it comes to getting outside? This is something that I think is going to be increasingly important for a number of factors. And I just want to touch on those so that everybody's on the same page as we go into this. So real quickly, I'll have them introduce themselves in a moment, but today's panelists are James is coming to us from London, Danielle from New Jersey, and Todd from upstate New York.
Hey, folks.
And then myself and Matt are here in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota.
How you doing, everyone?
So why is this an important discussion? Today we really have a disconnect in people getting outside and hunting from the standpoint of living in urban environments creates challenges. And if you look at this data, you see obviously over a very long period of time a dramatic increase in urban dwelling as part of society. And along with that, I think we have certain challenges that come with that. And that's what we're going to discuss today. And simultaneously, if you look at data over the last, let's say 50, 75 years, we see in the US specifically, this data is relative to the US only, we see a decline in hunting for people as a percentage of the total population, from a higher point of around 8% in the late 50s to today's numbers, which are hovering somewhere around 4.5%. And so I think the fact of urbanization is definitely one of the factors that comes into play when it comes to these declines. But let me step back for a moment and have everybody introduce themselves and maybe just give a little bit of a perspective on why this is a topic of importance and interest to you. And I guess I'd like to start with James.
Hi, everyone. So I'm the best part of 40 years old, and I've lived in a metropolis like London for pretty much all of my life. So I'm well versed in the challenges that it takes to get out and actually go out hunting, especially from a UK perspective. I work in a restaurant business which happens to specialize in wild game. And so that makes it even, in one sense, it makes it easier because it connects you with people who are interested in it. In one sense, it makes it harder because you're working brutal hours. And if you're, as all hunters will know, you're normally up before dawn. So if you're going to bed before dawn and you're up before dawn, it makes it especially difficult in this business.
Thanks, James. Danielle, you're on mute, by the way.
Hold on. Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, we're good. All right, thanks. So, hi everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm originally from North Carolina, and I started hunting 2 years ago when I moved to New Jersey. just because I wanted a cleaner source of protein. I'm in the fitness industry, and it really, really helped me out there. And I work with functional medicine, helping people reverse a lot of different health conditions. So it's really opened up avenues of helping myself and other people around me get really clean protein.
Todd.
Hey everyone. So this is Todd Waldron, and I live in northern New York in the Adirondack Mountains. And I am a lifelong hunter, but I am fairly new at mentoring, and I'm excited about this hunting season. I'm going to be in a mentoring program called Field to Fork, where we are getting new hunters out in the field in a formal way through a program and introducing and exploring connections to their food, along with them. So I'm really excited about the mentoring aspect of this. And I'm a Hunt to Eat ambassador. I'm also involved with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers in New York. And in New York State, we have a very diverse group of hunters and anglers. So, it's a very diverse state geographically, from the Great Lakes on down to Brooklyn. And so this is of really a great interest to me and to some of my friends in New York who live in urban areas like the city, who are exploring opportunities to connect to their food.
Thanks, Todd. And my name is Mark Norquist. I'm the founder of Modern Carnivore, also a board member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers here in Minnesota, which is a great conservation organization focused on getting people out in the public lands, as well as Matt, who's joining me this morning here to help out on this, is also a board member. So I think we've got a great group of people with different perspectives on this. So let's just jump right into it. So again, increasingly urban society throughout the world, a drop in participation in hunting, which I think has certain correlations to it. One of the things that we, at Modern Carnivore, we're focused on getting people outdoors, hunting, fishing, and foraging, and knocking down the barriers to that. And so when you ask people why have they started hunting, oftentimes they are in urban environments today just because of the nature of our demographics and where people live. But these are some of the answers that people give. And I think, Danielle, you just talked about this a little bit on your own story. People say, I wanted a connection to the outdoors. I needed honest answers to where my food came from. And I believe that lean and clean protein is what my body needs to be more healthy. I think those align very much with what, again, Danielle, what you were just talking about, which is great. So I guess what I'd like to do is throw it to the group. Feel free, whoever wants to jump in on this first. But I'd like to pose everyone the question, does the average person in today's society really understand hunting? If you think about what it is that each of us do, and I think those disconnects where people maybe don't have a lot of exposure to it the way they did in the past. But that's just one perspective and one theory. Maybe you feel like everybody does get it, but what thoughts do you have? Maybe I'll start with, just go right down the line again. James, do you have perspective on that? And especially with you living in London, one of the world's largest cities, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's tough because there's a disconnect even underneath that surface, where there's a disconnect between hunting and shooting in the UK. Most people, when I tell them I go hunting for my dinner, most people assume that it's part of some big, expensive, corporately organized, driven shoot with gamekeepers and all that kind of stuff, which is not the case at all. So even the people who go shooting on a very kind of on a completely different level to all of us here are used to doing, even they're part of a minority. So us guys would be a sort of substrata of an even smaller minority in the UK. So I think there is a massive disconnect there. There's an enormous disconnect. I think in the last couple of years it's got better. I do think that more people are asking questions about the food chain ethics. And I think in one sense, a lot of that has been helped by, strangely enough, by things like the vegan movement, which has, shone a light on industrial farming. And I think there are a lot of people who do want, like you said, clean and ethically sourced protein.
How about Danielle?
Yeah, I know for me, a lot of the times, especially at work, a lot of my peers don't really understand hunting. I know for me, I didn't understand hunting until I got into it. And that's part of the reason why I got started as an adult, because I grew up in North Carolina and I knew that people hunted, but I didn't know how people hunted. Like, I didn't understand the concept of public land. I've had friends ask me, like, to me, it seems kind of outrageous because I'm a part of the hunting community now, but I can't really think down about some of their questions because I had one of my friends one time asked me if you could like hunt a cow, like things like that. So it just shows you the fact that, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're not exposed to it, how can you know about it, So I would definitely say there is a huge disconnect, and a lot of the mass majority doesn't understand what hunting is. A lot of people think that when people think of hunting, they automatically think of, oh, well, somebody's going to go kill a giraffe in Africa. And a lot of the times they don't understand, especially the laws and how heavily regulated hunting is.
Do you think people, when you say the word hunting today, do you think a lot of people, their first concept in their mind is trophy hunting, is Africa, due to the media?
Absolutely. Because I know when I tell people that I hunt, they're like, oh my God, you shoot Bambi? That's the first thing that I always get.
That Walt Disney, what did he do?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you, Todd, you've got an interesting perspective. You live in a state with one of the world's largest cities, but you also live upstate in a very rural area.
Yeah, Mark. So I would just, I tend to agree with Danielle and James that there is somewhat of a disconnect in today's average person in understanding what hunting is really all about. Now, that's kind of a function of their background and their, have they been exposed to hunting or not? If somebody has been exposed to hunting through family members or through friends, they might have a different perspective than somebody that has no exposure at all. One of the things I'd like to expand on too is to say that along with, maybe some misunderstanding about the motives of why we hunt for food, is also just like not really understanding the connection between hunting and conservation and funding and sustainable, sustainability for food sources, but also for landscapes. So I think that there's also a gap there when you start talking to people about the financial contributions, the habitat contributions, and all the science behind all of that. There's a lot of education opportunities out there, in my opinion, to talk to people that are non-hunters.
James, when you touched on maybe sort of a mismatch of what people think of for hunting and how you do it, can you share a little bit about how you do hunt? Because, I lived in the UK almost 20 years ago now, and I did have an opportunity to go do a driven pheasant hunt. And that is what I think of when I think of hunting in the UK. It was very, very proper. With all
everyone in a suit and tie and a bowler hat.
Oh, we had knickers on and we were suited and booted. Exactly. So how do you hunt, and explain a little bit of that.
So it really does depend on the season. So yesterday I was out shooting wood pigeons, which I guess the closest bird that you have in the States would be a dove. So they're considered vermin in the UK, so you can hunt them all year round. But you tend to basically shoot them August, September, when all the crops have been harvested, when they harvest the barley and then they come down to feed on the barley. So that's basically just a form of, that was a day sitting in a blind, in late summer, effectively, waiting for, shooting birds over decoys. That then stretches through to September. You start with a wild fowling, what you guys call waterfowl, which is duck and geese. And then that's also the partridge opener. And then pheasants normally start around October, which are then normally what we call rough shoot, which is hunting over dogs. So there'll be me, my father, and a few friends of ours. We'll go out to a woodland or a forest somewhere. We'll work our dogs into the underground and try and push up whatever it pushes up. Sometimes it's a woodcock, sometimes it's a pheasant, sometimes it's a partridge. I don't really get involved too much in the gamekeeping side of it. I don't really get involved too much in the driven side of it. I like to be outdoors. You know, I find that the more formal the day becomes, the more barriers there are to just going out and enjoying the woodland. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you see people thinking along the lines of not understanding what that is then, you know, in terms of when you talk about whether it's waterfowl, upland birds, it's just, again, it's sort of a foreign concept. Do you see scenarios and situations where you're able to explain it and the light bulb goes off for people?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And to be fair, the disconnect seems to be, the majority of the disconnect seems to stem from the UK. So if I'm speaking, because London's such a cosmopolitan city, we've got 350 different languages spoken, right? And hunter-gathering is effectively the one platform that we're all built on. So it's the big common unifier amongst all of us. So when I speak to people from outside of the UK, they tend to actually have a much more educated view on things, especially in America, actually. The Americans that come over seem to be the people who seem to be the most clued up about it with what I'm talking about. And I think that's real testament to your public lands, which obviously we don't have over here. So there's another barrier that we have.
So where are you? I did want to touch on that since you brought it up now. Where are you hunting in the UK? Because as Todd, Danielle, and I and Matt have all touched on, with our connections to the organization Backcountry Hunters, a big part of the focus is on public land hunting. So
right.
Where are you hunting in the UK if you're an average person?
So for upland bird hunting is for private farms and woodland. If you live within an hour of a city like London, you're going to have to pay for that. You know, you have to have an agreement with the landowner, and you'll get 4 or 5 guys together, or 6 or 7 guys together, and you'll find a syndicate agreement with him where you basically pay him X amount of money, and he gives you the right to basically go and shoot on his land. The majority of land, there's quite a few pheasants that are being bred here, so there's quite a lot will come in and find solace on neighbouring properties, so you don't really have to get into too much gamekeeping. If you're shooting waterfowl or anything underneath what they call the high water mark, then that's pretty easy to get to, you know. And if you join any kind of conservation syndicate that's involved in duck or goose shooting, it will only cost you, say, £200 a year, like a nominal fee, and then that will open up somewhere between 10 and 20,000 acres of tide for you to basically shoot around. So it's all basically tide flighting and you know, getting there for the morning and the evening flights. You know, and then if you're deer hunting, which I do in November, then you have to find the owner of a woodland who will normally be very amenable to you helping him out to control the numbers of deer in the woodland, because they find them a massive pest. They don't have an apex predator in the UK. We don't have anything that hunts them. And there's so many of them, it's unbelievable. And we've got 6 types of deer now roaming wild in the UK, you know. And there's not enough people with what they call a firearm certificate to go out and do that, because that's quite tightly regulated.
Yeah. And you're able to serve wild game in your restaurant, correct?
Right, correct. Yeah, correct. So there's no limit on market hunting, and there's no bag limits in the UK. You can shoot as many as you want.
Interesting. Yeah, very, very different from the US, where we've got, I'll just really quick touch on for people listening in the US and in Canada, we have what's called the North American model to conservation. And there are 7 principles within there. And one of them is around the professional management of game and populations. And so that does dictate at the state level by Fish and Game agencies or the Department of Natural Resources what amount of game can be taken. And that varies greatly by the type of species, by the season, by the area of the state you may be hunting in. So very different from the UK, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think that there's one caveat to the UK law, which says you're not allowed to market hunt waterfowl. So all the ducks and geese you're not allowed to sell. Everything else is available. And I
So
think that was because, so I was just going to say, I think it's because upland birds was typically the preserve of the aristocracy, and duck hunting was, you know, for the kind of common man, as it were.
yeah. So, James, when you serve wild game to your guests in your restaurants, what's the reaction? And I guess how frequently are you serving wild game? Is it a special selection periodically, depending upon what you harvest, or is it a regular part of the menu?
Oh, it's almost every night of the week. I mean, so even off season, there's still there's muntjac deer, which are always in season in the UK because they're an invasive tropical deer that haven't acclimatized to a temperate breeding cycle. So they're constantly in season. Rabbits are always in season. Wood pigeons are always in season. Squirrels are always in season, although we don't eat them over here, although I sneak one in every now and then. And so even through the high point of summer, there's always something that you can go. And I'm out normally typically once or twice a week. And if I can't make it out, then I've got plenty of other guys I know who will happily supply me in the restaurant. So it's every single night of the week, we've always got something.
And that's another component, I guess, relative to, you touched on market hunting. So again, for people listening in, market hunting in the U.S. is illegal. And we used to have market hunting, but in the late 1800s, it went to an extreme where it really nearly decimated certain populations. And so in today's society in the U.S., if you do see, you may see, as an example, pheasant, or you may see venison, but those are farm-raised, almost pseudo-domesticated animals that have been harvested like a livestock. So they aren't from the wild per se, the way James is doing it. So very different model. I think there are pluses and minuses to both of them, but really, really interesting conversation. I'm sure we could go on and on about that. Before I head on to the next question, I guess, Danielle, Todd, any other thoughts relative to just general perceptions of people in urban environments around hunting?
None for me.
Okay.
No, I think that's a great conversation. Touched on a lot of different topics. I think we're good.
Great. So next thing I'd like to touch on is, does a hunter who lives in an urban area openly tell people that she hunts? I put she down. So Danielle, we'll start with you on this one. How do you treat this issue?
Well, it's very sensitive because I kind of judge by the person. I work as a personal trainer and I teach classes, so I'm dealing with a lot of different people. And of course, we're right next door to New York, which if I were still working in Manhattan, I don't tell anybody in Manhattan. But in New Jersey, it is a little bit more understanding. Most people are curious when I tell them. And there have been like a couple of people that I have one client, I told her that I hunted and she was just like, what? No, I can't train with you anymore. And I'm like, wait, but you don't understand why I hunt. And then we had the conversation because she thought, oh, well, you're just killing animals and leaving them in the woods. I'm like, well, no, that's not how it works. So I try to take the opportunities where I can to enlighten people and educate people. But 9 times out of 10, you've got to get to know me before you know that I hunt. Because obviously, looking at me, I'm a young woman, and a lot of people just assume that I don't hunt. So it's a pleasant surprise to most people.
So what do you find when you're having that conversation with people, like with that client? What do you find as the explanations that helps them get their head around hunting and understanding, okay, I guess I'm not offended by that, if hopefully, and maybe even supportive of it?
Yeah, I just relate it back to my own story because I got started hunting because of health issues that I was having. And then I watched the documentary Earthlings, and you see what happens in factory farms. So, I can defend my point of view by saying, okay, well, if you're offended that I go out and get my own meat, you should see how your meat is manufactured. You know, I don't really have too much opposition when you look at it from that perspective. And, you know, all my friends that are vegan are completely understanding. And, you know, they're just like, well, if I were to eat meat, I would do it the way that you do it, and go out and get it myself.
Somebody said and Todd, maybe you want to bring this up, what somebody said that evening in that conversation we were having a few weeks ago, weren't they? They made a comment about vegans and hunters, right?
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. There's, in talking about the thoughtful nature of how we connect to the food, right? So the conversation was around, I think I want to rephrase this well, but like around the ethics of our food choices and the responsibilities and thinking through it, whether we choose to hunt or not choose to hunt. So that was I thought that the conversation surrounding that was really pretty thoughtful. And, you know, there was a lot of good feedback and just, you know, conversation there about what are the differences, of course, between, you know, choosing a vegan diet and a hunting diet, but also like what can be some of the similarities in terms of being thoughtful and mindful about your food. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, I think somebody even said, I think that, to quote them, it was something along the lines of, I think if vegans and hunters had more conversations, they'd realize they have more in common than differences.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Great. Well, I really appreciate those perspectives, and I think, you know, that is one of the challenges that we have when it comes to recruiting new hunters, which is our entire mission at Modern Carnivore. You know, one of the challenges being that people feel sheepish about even admitting who they are because of, I think, a lot of the challenges in society, and I think within urban environments, as you said, Danielle, if you were still in Manhattan, you'd be reticent to even put it out there. And I think that's a reality that I'm always looking at and trying to figure out how can we overcome this barrier and normalize conversations a bit more so that people don't take offense to it. And I think you know, the conversations like you're having are the way that we can do that. So, next question. What are the top 3 barriers to hunting? So, obviously it doesn't have to be 3, but I'd love each perspective from each of you on this in terms of, you know, we just talked about, I think, the cultural aspect. I think there are other aspects to that, other elements that contribute to that. But there are many, many more. So Todd, why don't we start with you? What do you see as some of the biggest challenges today for somebody who wants to start hunting and maybe they live in an urban environment?
Yeah, sure, Mark. So, you know, one of the things that comes up a lot when talking to new hunters or aspiring hunters is access. And, you know, traditionally that conversation comes around access to places to hunt, quality places to hunt. And so that's where, you know, having abundant public lands comes into play in many areas of the country where people can find places, quality habitat and open spaces and enough room to hunt. My thought process is kind of evolving based on the Brooklyn conversation that we had about access. You know, I'm beginning to think that access is a broader conversation too, not just about where we hunt, but about access, especially in urban communities, access to the hunting community, access to people who hunt. So there's a lot of different layers of access. You know, when you start kind of unpeeling that question, you know, like the conversation we had in Brooklyn, it's just like finding other people that hunt, having access to hunter education, having access to resources and logistics and food storage. So yeah, I think I think that access comes right up to the top of the list, and it's a broader type of perspective than just, you know, having quality public lands or private lands to be able to hunt on, although that's the fundamental basis for it.
Absolutely. So Danielle, you started hunting when you were 25, you said, correct?
Yes.
So, and you were living in New Jersey at the time?
Yes.
So what were some of the things you personally experienced as the difficulties of that needed to be overcome in starting down this path?
I 100% agree with Todd. My number one issue was access. I would say access definitely because, like I said, I didn't understand the concept of public land, so I didn't really know where to start. And then also mentorship was really hard for me because a lot of women, especially who get into hunting, they get in it because their boyfriend teaches them how to hunt or their father or some male figure in their life, but I don't come from a hunting family. So when I started, my number one thing was, okay, well, how do I find a mentor? And I started going to different hunting shows and just asking different people, and they all told me to try to find a outfitter to go through, but that's not really teaching me anything. So I think that was my second biggest obstacle, was finding a mentor. I ended up finding two, so they taught me a lot, and a lot of things I learned on my own the very, very hard way. And I would also add to that just equipment as well, because we look, especially if you're like on Instagram and you start following different hunters on Instagram, everybody's promoting some brand or some product, and you think, okay, well, I have to have that in order to be successful. I know I kind of fell into that trap, and I spent a lot of money that I didn't need to. And, you know, I think that can be very hindering to some people, especially if they are on a lower budget. They think, well, okay, well, this is too expensive to get into. And you know, that really just kind of holds them back as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the gear is one of the things I'm always trying to share perspectives, and we're actually going to be launching something soon that Matt's going to be leading the charge on, which is different hacks and ideas to get out in the field for a very affordable price, that you don't have to be wearing breeks and Barbara jackets all the time, right, James? And shooting Italian side-by-sides. Even though those are all nice. I always say those are all really nice things. But what do you see?
Yeah, but they don't shoot any better. You know? I got a one of my customers just went out and spent £120,000 on a matching pair of Purdy. And this guy can't shoot for toffee, right? And I'm there with my 1961 Browning Auto 5, and it makes no difference. Makes absolutely no difference.
So James, do you shoot the square back A5? Is that a 1960s vintage? Is that what you're talking about? That's what you got?
Yeah. I've got the old I've got an old humpback. Yeah, I've got an old humpback. It's, in the UK, it has to be regulated to only 3 shots, so it's not an old 5 shot. It's a 3 shot.
I've got one up on my wall right here.
3 shots. Maybe you should, think about doing something. Yeah, I love that old gun. Yeah,
it's a good gun. What do you see as barriers? And obviously, I think there are some that might be unique to the UK, as well as some that are universal. But what, as you think about living in London, what if somebody wanted to get into hunting? What do you see as barriers?
Well, the first thing is we don't have any public lands. I mean, so that's access is just so much harder for us. Everything is private and everything is expensive anywhere near a city. We also have tightly controlled firearms regulations. So the regulations around that, you really need to be able to do your homework on. It's actually pretty simple to get a shotgun in the UK. You just apply for it. They'll do a quick background check. They have a quick chat with your general practitioner, with your doctor, to make sure you don't have any abuse issues with substance abuses or things like that, and then you're good to go. So the regulation to a shotgun is pretty easy. If you want to step up from that and get yourself what we call a firearm, which would basically be anything from a 22 all the way up to a 50 caliber, you've got to go through several more hoops, and that regulation is convoluted, it's difficult, but not impossible. So the UK law basically just states that you have to demonstrate that you have good reason for that caliber. That's basically what you need to do, and you're only licensed per caliber. So you'll have a license for 22, or you have a license for 308 or 243 or what have you. So the firearms regulation can be a little bit tricky, but I would advise anybody in the UK to go on look at the British Association of Shooting and Conversation, called the BASC. You can speak to them, and they'll be able to guide you through it. You need firearms training, and then you need to have a certificate of competency that you know how to basically your way around a centerfire rifle, and that will go a long way into basically convincing Mr. Plod that you're not, that you're serious about it. You have to show an element of dedication when you apply, and that can be time consuming. It takes it can take up to 6 months, and a lot of people don't have the time to go and do that. They just want to grab their tutu and head out into the woods.
Yeah. We were discussing this in Britain a few weeks ago in terms of the getting your licensure for certain guns if you're living in the city, and I still don't understand all of the hoops, but that was pretty interesting. I thought, Todd, when we were having those conversations. Yeah,
there's definitely, it is specifically in New York and New York City. There's certainly, an extra layer of firearms regulations that you need to understand, and logistics and regulations and so forth. So it's almost analogous to like in New York State, outside of New York City in the boroughs, there's like a pistol permit process that can take several months, and it can be very detailed and time consuming, and working through courses and so forth. And sounds like, from my friends in the city, it sounds like that's a similar process down there. So that's one more layer that they're dealing with in an urban environment in New York, is just access to the firearms and understanding the regulations surrounding them.
James, does so given the greater
and certainly in the UK, I'd echo that. Hey, sorry, I missed you. Do you mind? Sorry, it broke up for a sec. Do you mind repeating that, please, Mark?
Yeah, I think we're getting a little bit of across the pond delay going on here. So it's,
sorry.
That's all right. I was just going to ask James, and then please share with everyone what you were just going to say. But I was going to ask, relative to the difficulty with getting rifles, getting a license for a rifle to do large game like deer hunting versus a shotgun. I guess my question was going to be, is there a community of people who are archery hunting for big game, and is that something that's popular or not?
No, it's illegal. It's completely illegal to bow hunt in the UK. I don't know why. I think that basically what happened is that before compound bows were effectively, ubiquitous, everybody was going out and hunting with longbows, and I think there was just too many wounded deer basically running around, and so they brought in an act that effectively, like a kind of cruelty to animal act, which basically meant that you're only allowed to use certain calibers when you're out deer hunting. You have to have certain muzzle velocity, so you can't even shoot black powder on a deer. You can't muzzle load if you go deer hunting. So bow hunting is legal in the majority of European countries, but we don't have in the UK the political lobbying pressure on our government to basically have it reconsidered. I mean, it was banned decades ago, and they just haven't bothered to reconsider it, unfortunately. Interesting.
Danielle, you're avid bow hunter, right? That's one of the things you love to do. Is there a pretty strong community that you're seeing in the New Jersey area for bow hunting? And do you think there's any, getting back to our original discussion point, do you see any difference and or openness and or support for archery versus gun hunting or anything?
Oh, absolutely. Going back to the regulation in New Jersey, we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Just to get a firearms identification card in order to touch any firearm can take up to 6 months. It normally takes a minimum of 3 months to do. You have to go through a background check, fingerprint, registration, whole nine. And so I think that drives a lot of people to bow hunting. There are a few different organizations that are for bow hunters. I know that there's like New Jersey Bow Hunters Association and things like that. And we also have we have more liberal regulations when it comes to bow hunting, especially with the different suburban areas. We have special permits that we can get for bow hunting versus gun hunting. We also have a 5-month-long deer season, which is great. So there's a lot more openness to bow hunting versus any rifle or shotgun hunting.
That's great. Yeah, I do think archery is a great opportunity to get people introduced. And like you said, James, with modern technologies of compound bows, that's interesting that it is illegal. When you think of the efficacy of a compound bow is pretty darn good these days. And I think
I know that there's a few guys who are into, so there's a sort of bow hunting community of the UK, but they just hop across to France, you know, and they'll hunt roe deer in France with their bow, or they'll go to Spain and they'll go to the Pyrenees to hunt mountain goats up there. So it is possible. It's just not, unfortunately, for some annoying reason, not in the UK.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, well, let's move on to our next topic. And we've already touched on this a little bit. And so maybe should have had this one first, but you know, what does access mean to you when it comes to hunting? And I bring this up because, again, in our event a few weeks ago discussing these topics, it was really interesting getting somebody living in Brooklyn's perspective on access, meaning not actually having the public lands available, but how do I get there? How do I get there with my gun? Because some people talked about, you know, here's where they hunt, here's where they live. Their guns over here, kept over here due to regulation. So they have to figure out how to get from point A to point B, then over to point C. So I guess I just want to get maybe a little bit of a deeper dive on this topic and what access means. Because again, I think primarily it's oftentimes cited as the number one reason people stop hunting. They don't have access. And generally, I think we think of lands. They don't have public lands available nearby, and or they don't have family owned lands or a friend who has a large chunk of property that they're allowed to hunt on. But I think it is much bigger and deeper. So let's just talk a little bit about the logistics of it in terms of access to the guns and transportation centers. So James, what's your perspective on that, being in London? And your restaurant is in Kensington, right? Which is right down near the Thames. You're like, that's the heart of London.
Right. So my restaurant's in the city in Zone 1, and I live about as far away from the city as I possibly can. So I live right on the outskirts of London and the countryside, in like one of the last streets of what they call Greater London, which is effectively an old county. The UK law basically says that your guns have to be secured at all times to do whatever is reasonably necessary. So so they have to be in a gun safe. You have to have 2 gun safes if you've got firearms for rifles, one for ammunition and the bolt, and the other one for the effectively the carcass of the rifle. And it stops me from basically leaving straight from work to go out hunting, because I would have a hard time convincing a policeman that my guns were, if they were left in the boot of my car while I was doing an 8-hour shift at work, that was a secure and proper way to keep them, if that makes sense. So you can do it if you separate them into pieces. So if you basically take the bolt with you, take the ammunition with you, take as much as you can with you, put a trigger guard on it. And then if the guns are stolen from the boot of your car, you can say, well, listen, I've done everything I possibly could to make those guns safe. I think you might have more truck with a firearms officer. But the reality is that most guys don't ever want to cross their local firearms officer in London, because most firearms officers in London spend their time taking Glocks off street gangs, and they just view all firearms as a major headache and a major problem. If you're out in the countryside, you're going to be talking to a guy who probably shoots himself on a regular basis, probably goes out hunting as well, and he's going to be much more sympathetic and he's going to take a much more common sense approach to it. But it's a shame, because sometimes I've got to drive for 2-3 hours to get out to a place, and it'd be a whole lot easier if I could leave just straight from work. But short of mounting a secure gun safe in work, I have to then come from work down to home and then have to go back again. It is a pain, but it safeguards my license, and I don't want to lose my license.
Todd, what do you hear from people regarding access, and specifically, you know, the process of getting from point A to point B, and that being a problem or not? Or have you heard of any ideas that people have come up with to overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, sure, Mark. So one thing I'm learning from my friends in New York City is that being a hunter in an urban metropolitan area like New York is a crash course in logistics, right? So very basic things like not only the firearms management and dealing with that, but just vehicle transportation, right? So like some of the people, our friends at the Brooklyn barbecue, if you live in Cobble Hill or Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, you might not even have a car, right? So having vehicle access then to get from downtown to a place where you choose to hunt, whether that's Sterling Forest in New York or Fawnstock Park, which could be a couple hours away, you know, so that just adds a whole different element to the whole situation, is just transportation physically, and like figuring out the navigation. Can you use public transportation or not? You know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's all logistics. And then it's, you know, not only getting to your hunting place, but then if you're successful and you have meat to bring home, it's dealing with all that logistical stuff too. You know, having a freezer, you know, space is at a premium in Brooklyn or Queens or Whitestone. And so all of that kind of stuff just, I think, adds another element, another layer, and gives me a deep appreciation for our friends in the city that are working through all of that to become successful hunters.
I think those are really interesting points. Just a quick reminder, if you do have questions, you can click on the Q&A button. I do want to ask Danielle, we might have one right now, but Danielle, what, you know, for you living in Jersey, you're in a dense urban area of New Jersey?
Yes.
And do you like how do you manage those logistics, both before, and I think I love Todd's point about access to even you know, freezing your game after and those types of things. So what are some of your perspectives on that?
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what Todd just said. It's kind of funny because I drive a Chrysler 300. So I'm not going to be able to get into the same places as if I had, you know, an F-150. So that's another obstacle that I personally face. And just knowing where to go in. This past turkey season, I thought I was going to get arrested because I'm driving back and forth on the road because the public access area was actually inside of an old housing development. Like, it was the strangest thing. You never would have known where you were going, because it's not like they list an address for, okay, if you're trying to access this WMA, go to this place. So I was just kind of wandering around for 2 hours until somebody got tired of me turning around in their parking or their driveway and called a conservation officer who was, you know, nice enough to help me out. But that's my biggest issue right now with access, as well as knowing where to go, especially like for turkey or for deer or whatever you're hunting. You need to know, where can I access the habitat where the animal is actually going to be? And, you know, you can go on a hiking trail and find a hiking trail, but that might not get you to an actual huntable area. So that's been a really big issue for me too.
Absolutely. Do you have a place to freeze game once you're successful in a harvest?
Lucky enough for me, my grandparents live about 15 minutes away, and they have like 3 deep freezers. So,
Nice.
so I have that convenience, but not everybody has that.
Right, absolutely. Oh, those are great perspectives, and deep freeze is definitely an important component in the mix. I didn't even think of that before, Todd. I think that's a great point. So one of the last ones here. Oh, okay, yeah. You know what? Let me step back for a second. Question.
Yeah, hi, this is Matt. Sorry about that, folks. One of the attendees pointed out, and clearly he's got some time as a mentor. Access at that point for someone new to hunting is just bringing that person along with you and showing them the way and providing them good hunting experiences. So one way to overcome some of that is to be able to find a mentor. I know Todd's involved in that program. Obviously, Hank, an attendee here, is involved in that program. I was at a meeting with the Minnesota DNR last night about our mentored deer hunting program that's starting here in the next couple of weeks. So finding a way to get people access is a good way to do that, is to take them along with you and show them, for those of us that have the experience. There are applications out there for phones or whatnot that can help as well, and we can point the way that way if people have questions on that. But most importantly, it's those of us that have hunting experience need to engage those that are looking to gain experience and take them along with us and show the way. That's how I learned to hunt as an 8-year-old, and a 25-year-old can learn the exact same way. It's a faster process. It's a decent process, and it, as a hunting mentor, is one of the more enjoyable processes I've been involved with as a hunter.
Absolutely. We get the mics worked out there. Yeah, I think mentoring is important. And actually, it's a great lead into the next question, which is how important is camaraderie in hunting? And I think, you know, when you look at the important aspects of Danielle, your grandparents living nearby, they have the deep freeze. For somebody else, it might be maybe they have a friend who has a deep freeze, and they're able to share some space if they don't have room, let's say, in an apartment. I think that is important. I think, and I would put mentoring as a component underneath there. But is that, James, is that something, do you see mentoring of new hunters happening in the UK at all?
Unfortunately, no.
You're on mute, James.
Oh, am I? Hold on. Can you hear me now?
It might actually just be laggy.
I think it's just the delay.
Hold on, James. See if we got that solved.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I think we may need to lay a new cable.
I think it's the delay, unfortunately.
The sound is not. Danielle, Todd, can we hear you?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear James, but I'm a little closer to the UK than you are in Minnesota. So.
You know what? It was my fault when Matt and I tried to toggle between microphones here on computers. I hit the speaker off on mine.
Oh, right, okay.
So
is that better now, Mark? Can you hear me? Okay, fine. Yeah, the only real mentoring programs that are top of mind are for wildfowling. You can go out, if you find your local duck hunting club, they'll take you out, I think it's 4 times a year for a nominal fee of like £10 a time. So it's really nothing, you know. That's certainly one way that I would recommend. That's how I got into wildfowling. And they'll teach you how about, you know, safety on the shore and quarry identification and all that kind of stuff. There is a course you can do for deer hunting in the UK, which is recommended, like your kind of your DSC course, it's called. But to be honest with you, it's not a big thing over here, unfortunately. All the guys that I hunt with, I'm the youngest guy by about 100 years. You know, I mean, it's like they're all old school Italian guys who emigrated to the UK after the Second World War, and they brought with them that tradition of what we call rough shooting, of you know, hunting over dogs, you know, just walking for miles and coming home with something. So I was lucky to be born into that kind of environment. But if you're not, and if you live in the city, in the States, I would assume that, like Danielle mentioned, just find who your local club is, like she mentioned, New Jersey bow hunters, and just speak to them and just, and I'm almost sure. I mean, I would love if somebody came up to me and basically said, "Hey, I want to get into squirrel hunting or hunting rabbits or X, Y, Z." I would love to take them out. You know, I really would do. But I don't think that there's enough education out there, unfortunately, for people to come forward. But hopefully, you know, this is part of changing that.
Absolutely. Todd, what are your thoughts? You've been doing a lot of mentoring. We'll be doing some this fall.
Yeah, sure. So, toward the question, how important is camaraderie? I think it's critically important, Mark. I think, from a couple of, especially for people that are just getting started, for a couple of reasons. One is to have like a support group together, like working through hunting experiences, learning together, so there's just from the angle of supporting each other through the process, learning the technical aspects of hunting. I think that having that support group is important. Like when I talk to our friends in New York City about hunting, that often comes up about, trying to find other like-minded people that they can share information and success and challenges and everything like that. And so I think that, learning how to hunt is a process, and being able to share that with somebody is important. And then also just the emotional and enjoyment factor of it. It's, some of the reasons of why we choose to hunt are to share experiences outdoors, along with the food. It's spending time with people you care about and enjoying the outdoors with them. So I think there's some great emotional benefits to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Both sides, I think. And, we hear it time and again, experienced hunters talking about how much they enjoy the introduction of new people, and that becomes a real important component for hunting for them. Danielle, you mentioned you had two mentors, I believe, correct?
Yes.
So was that based on location, proximity, expertise in one type of hunting versus another, or how were you so fortunate to get two mentors?
I think I was just persistent. To be completely honest, when I tell people how I got into hunting, a lot of people are like, oh, I wouldn't have stuck with it that long. Because like I said, when I was getting started, I was going to different hunting shows, and I stopped at every booth and I'm like, hi, I don't come from a hunting background. I want to learn how to hunt. How can I do that? And I stumbled upon my first mentor. His name is James Salt. He's, I think 75, 76. He's an older gentleman, and he is just so nice. And he did what, like we've been saying, he was like, well, if you're comfortable with it, I would like to take you out turkey hunting. So that was my introduction to turkey hunting. And, he followed me through that process, and he always reaches out, and we're good friends now, and we'll say like, hey, how's it going? Like, how's your season going? But he doesn't deer hunt. So I ended up getting my deer hunting mentor through a program that the NWTF does in New Jersey. And especially for women, there are a lot more programs available now. So I would say that, camaraderie is very important, because without my second mentor, I wouldn't have shot my first deer, which was a gorgeous 8-point buck, and I was very spoiled. So I wouldn't have had that without her. And especially from a more feminine perspective, you want to have people that you can call on in case something goes wrong, or have people that can show you how to safely navigate the woods, and have those resources, because a lot of the times I am in the woods by myself. So I've learned different ways to protect myself. I don't have to worry about any bears or anything like that, or any other people getting in my way in that area as well.
Great perspectives. Yeah, I think it is critically important, and one of the things we're continuing to try to do in different areas is make sure we've got that social fabric to keep people connected to. It could be an individual mentor, but also the broader community. And I think connecting up the hunting community more effectively is really important for us to do. I think we've touched on this question. Do you see opportunities to engage more people who live in urban areas? I'm presuming we all would agree that there are opportunities there, and I think it's incumbent upon us and anybody listening into this, if you are part of the hunting community already, to look for those opportunities, and as Matt had said, to look for ways that you can support the future. So, I know we're at about an hour right now, and I said that that's what we were going to do for timeline. So I want to be respectful to everyone's time. But, I'm just wondering real quick if anybody, if each of you, do you have thoughts on what somebody should do if they live in an urban center and they're interested in starting to hunt? James, maybe with you, is there something that you have as a perspective in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, you can just Google, your local office of the BASE, the British Association of Shooting and Conservation, or the GWCT, Game Wildlife Conservation Trust. A good place to start would be the NRA in the UK, where they will train you up on firearms training, or find your local Home Office approved, gun range where you can go and speak to guys who will undoubtedly be there zeroing their rifle, and just show up and just chat to people. I mean, we love it when guys come up to us and want to get into it, because like the graph showed at the beginning, we're only less than 5% of the population, so we've got to try and beef up those numbers a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle, any sort of final thoughts on what you would say to somebody wanting to learn to hunt?
Absolutely. I'd say the easiest thing would be to join a conservation group based on what you want to hunt, whether that's Ducks Unlimited, the NWTF, and start making connections there. Talk to as many people as you can, and just really do your research, read. There's tons of videos on YouTube regarding equipment, whether you want to bow hunt or shotgun hunt, muzzleloader, and especially if you just go to get your hunting license, you find a lot of resources there as well.
Todd, final thoughts?
Yeah, I echo Danielle's thoughts and James' thoughts. Conservation group, there's a lot of good ones out there in places like New York. So find one that speaks to you. There's the Turkey Federation, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, QDMA, Trout Unlimited. So there's just a whole bunch of great people out there who are willing to share their knowledge and experience and passion if you seek them out. And there's some really cool programs as well, like New York, for women that are interested in hunting in New York. There's the Becoming an Outdoors Woman program that's really exciting. That's through Department of Environmental Conservation. So keep your eye open for programs like that, the mentoring programs, that can maybe introduce you to some people that might open those doors for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great thoughts and perspectives. So my just closing thought is, as far as a quick thing people could do if they wanted, obviously, at Modern Carnivore, we've got information, we share recipes, guidance, instruction, etc. on starting to hunt. And then also for, this is a limited time note here. So if you're watching this after the 25th of September 2019, this is not an opportunity. But if you're live right now, or you're going to watch the recording before the 25th, and you are interested in being part of a Learn to Hunt camp, we're giving away 2 tickets free of charge to one person who will be drawn randomly for this pheasant hunt in central Minnesota that we're doing in partnership with Pheasants Forever, yet another conservation organization that's really great about hunter recruitment. And this is it's over a weekend. People will arrive Friday evening, get to know each other, and then Saturday we'll be doing a hunt, a pheasant hunt, and then at the end of the day, cleaning birds, teaching everybody about cooking wild game, and then concluding Sunday morning. So it's going to be a fun event where we're pairing up every individual new hunter with a mentor, but it's a limited group size because we want to be very careful that we're focused on all the needs of the new hunters. And so for people who are interested, they can go to modcarn.com/giveaway. But I appreciate everybody being on today's podcast. I especially want to thank the panelists, James, Danielle, Todd, and Matt here. Thanks so much for being part of this. And we'll put this out on YouTube after so people can watch it. And let me know if you have any questions. You can always email me, mark@modcarn.com, if you want to connect with anyone or have any other questions. Thanks.
Yes, it's great seeing everybody. Have a great day.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all.